A new gadget seems to come out each and every week, but how often should you upgrade? Well, it's time to talk tech. We're giving you the experts, the insight, and some of the hottest debate around. Here it is, folks. It's The Loop. Today we're talking about the latest tech and gadgets. Now, before the break, we asked you if you would rather spend big money to own the latest gadget or wait 6 months for the bugs to be all worked out and save yourself some cash, of course. Well, according to our text message counting scientists at the G4 Labs, only 38% of you need to have the latest and greatest, while 62% prefer to wait and save. A little surprising. I thought we had some early adopters out there. Come on, kids. Joining us via satellite to help us make sense of it all from San Francisco is Molly Wood, executive editor of CNET's Media and Entertainment Group. From New York, Ryan Block, co-founder and editor of Engadget.com. And from our lovely studios here in Los Angeles, Attack of the Show's own Little Will O'Neill. Welcome, everybody, to The Loop. Thanks for joining us. I want to start off with something that was said. Apple co-founder, actually, Steve Jobs, recently said this. He said, quote, "If you always want the latest and greatest, then you have to buy a new iPod at least once a year." Molly, the fans, even the Mac zealots, got a little upset by this quote. Understandably, I mean, the iPod gets constantly updated, and the one that you own, it seems instantly obsolete. You know, Jobs admits it himself. Am I a sucker? Like, I'm afraid to buy a Mac laptop because it seems that Apple does this with all their products. Am I crazy? Am I alone on this one?
I don't think so. I am not surprised at all to hear that the Mac faithful were pretty upset about that. I personally was kind of just shocked that he would say that in public, because I think that's the one complaint people have about the iPod. You know, I'm normally for early adoption, actually, but to me the iPod is the big exception. I mean, it's insane how often a new iPod comes out.
But the iPod is so prolific, though. Does it seem like Steve can say whatever he wants because he knows they're going to sell anyways? Everybody's going to be rocking one?
Yeah, absolutely. And people are either going to stick with the old ones because, you know, the bugs have been worked out of the iPod. It's not like you have to worry that much about the all-new hardware. So people are either going to stick with the one they have or jump when Steve says jump.
Yeah, and they'll ask how high, and they'll walk into their stores, and they're matching turtlenecks and jeans, and they'll purchase away. Ryan, what about phones? It's not just limited to Apple and iPods and laptops. I mean, it seems like the Motorola Q just came out. Everybody's canceling cell phone subscriptions to go get the latest and greatest cell phones. Are they suckers too? Are they going and shelling out too much money for one extra feature?
You know, I don't think so. But I mean, generally, I think the concept of obsolescence is obsolete in and of itself, because the way the gadgets progress, it's so gradual that, you know, these new phones come out and they're not revolutionary. There's not a lot of new features on there that really make it worth getting these new devices. Like the Q is basically your standard Windows smartphone. I mean, there's nothing on there except maybe EVDO and the thinness that makes it that desirable.
Well, I think you touched on it right there. The thing is damn sexy, Ryan. Come on. That's clearly worth getting rid of my old Trio brick and upgrading. Do you think people are buying these phones just because they do look stylish?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think that as consumer electronics become a larger part of people's attaché, you know, what they carry with them every single day and how they identify themselves stylistically, these devices becoming sexier, and the Razr and the Sliver and the Q and these thin, svelte devices will continue to draw more customers. But I don't think that in and of itself is necessarily a reason to call another device obsolete.
That's a good point there. Will, I want to toss it over to you, sir, because the Motorola Q, we're talking about this phone now. There's also the Trio 700W. I got to believe that most consumers out there don't know what these brand names are and what these numbers mean. How can they stay up to date with all this knowledge when it seems like every day there's a new phone out?
Well, I guess people can go to sites like CNET.com as well and Engadget and things like that and see, you know, previews of devices before they come out. You know, because a lot of us have been looking at these things since like well before CES in January. So we've been looking at the Q, for instance, for, you know, nearly more than 6 months. So we've been playing with it. So we kind of, you know, have a pretty good idea of what it's going to be before it comes out. You know?
Now, do you believe, though, that everybody out there is going to actually spend the time to go and review these things? Or do you think a lot of people are going to walk into a store and say, okay, I've got $500-600, it's time to buy whatever the latest thing is, or the most expensive thing, because clearly that's the best?
Well, I think that there's like two types of people out there. There's one group that actually goes out and they research things on like Engadget and things like that and read previews and read all the hype and things like that. Then there are other people who just want to have like the newest thing. They just go into the store. I heard that there's this new phone out and I want it, so they're just going to go buy it without reading about it. So those are the people, the early adopters, of course, who actually encounter a lot of the early bugs and things like that. But they don't really care because they just want to have it first, be the first to get on the block.
Are those the same jerks who are buying $200, $2.50 for a ringtone and spending $6 on a wallpaper for their cell phone and making me pay it too?
I was actually going to say that. I think those jokes are you and me, Kevin. Because,
yes, that's right. Good point. Molly, now we were talking about bugs earlier on. It was our poll question. You know, new products, they're going to have inevitable bugs, but those things get ironed out. Do you think the early adopters are getting screwed more and more because there's newer and newer products coming out? Should they just relax and maybe wait?
You know, I think there's an argument to be made for waiting, but at the same time, I'll refer to my friend Ashley's rule of electronics. If you don't have it, you can't use it. So sometimes it's cool enough that it's worth suffering through a few bugs knowing that there's going to be a firmware update. I think the problem for most consumers now, though, is that, like particularly in software, everything seems to be in beta. And so there is an idea that companies can just put out a slightly unfinished product, and that's where we're getting screwed.
Yeah.
It's not about us being patient.
It took me about 3 months for my Trio, the original 600, to actually make a phone call without crashing. So I take that one to heart. Ryan, the
My
Xbox 360 came out. There were some power supply issues, some hardware issues. You know, some customers felt burned. Now we got the PS3 coming out later this year with a ton of technology in it. The Blu-ray, the cell chip, some backwards compatibility PS2 junk in there. Are people crazy to go and pick this thing off the shelf right away? Are they playing Russian roulette with their hardware?
Well, you know, it's hard to say, especially since we're still so far out from launch. But I did think that piece of news that we saw, I think it was today, or maybe it was yesterday, about them including actual PS2 hardware in the device that would later become software in future hardware revisions of the PS3 was really disconcerting, because that to me says that they are not ironed out, they're not ready to include all the functionality that they want to include in this thing. So I'm going to say, you know, jury's still out, especially depending on what you want to do with this device, because if you want to buy a PS3 to watch Blu-ray movies, I'm sure that is going to work seamlessly. If you want to play PS2 games, I'm not entirely sure. If you want to play PS3 games, obviously that's going to work really well.
All right, Ryan, Molly, appreciate it. Will, I want to give you the final word. Early adopters, suckers, yes or no?
No, they're not suckers.
All right, there you go. It's right there. Molly Wood, Ryan Block, Will O'Neill, thank you for joining us and keeping us in the loop.